Hello, everybody. Welcome here to another edition of Every Rockie Ever, the Colorado Rockies podcast with Rocky Mountain Rooftop, which is a proud affiliate of Fans First Sports Network. I'm your host, Skyler Timmons, joined here once again, as always, by my brother, Dustin.
Howdy ho.
Howdy, howdy. And we are joined here by co-host of the Affected by Altitude podcast, wearing his Albuquerque Isotopes gear. It's Evan Lang.
Wait, this isn't... I think I'm on the wrong show. This isn't Affected by Altitude.
It's true.
Oh, are we doing a mingle? Is this a rooftop mingle?
No, it is not. Yes. And we
Yeah,
may
I
or may
don't
not
think
be...
I've never officially been on an Every Rockie Ever outside of the Todd Helton special episode.
Yeah, you are here now to talk about Every Rockie Ever. Not Every Rockie Ever, but a couple of guys that are part of Every Rockie Ever. And if you don't know, Evan also writes over purpleroad.com and also helps out with the Fans First Sports Network with our Rocky Mountain Rooftop Affected by Altitude, which is our flagship podcast of this network. But yeah, and we may or may not be recording this after our regular episode of Affected by Altitude. So
no, we all just forgot to do our laundry and just wore the same clothes, same hats.
It's true. But we'll get this show on the road here. It's been a while. It's a busy school year for Dustin and just other life stuff. So we're glad to be back here recording one. I think our last one was talking about the random They Used to Be Rockies, the Royals Walton guys.
Kevin Millwood.
Fun episode a couple of weeks ago. And everybody's favorite player, Jose Reyes. But we brought Evan on here because Evan's got a couple of guys, some of his favorite Rockies. And Evan, real quick, give the people just your quick background on just being a Rockies fan in general.
So I've been a Rockies fan for almost as long as the team's been around. The team came into being when I was just a toddler, so of course it took a couple of years, but basically since 95, 96, I've been a Colorado Rockies fan through thick and thin. Mostly, through thick and thin, which is the bad one? Is it thick or is it thin? Because whichever one's the bad one, that's the one I've been through the most of. I have, of course, a ton of favorite Rockies players. Charlie Blackmon, Todd Helton, Larry Walker. Larry Walker and Todd Helton were my heroes growing up. I still have such an incredible amount of affection for them, especially if you saw me in the Todd Helton Hall of Fame episode. Started writing about the Rockies a few years ago, joined on with Purple Row a couple of years ago, and it's been such a great experience. The Rockies drive me insane. They drive any good Rockies fan insane. And, we're nearing the end of the season here right now, and your brain goes, oh, man, I'm so ready for this to be over. But you know that as soon as that last pitch is thrown, as soon as the final out is recorded, you're going to be sitting there going, but I miss baseball. When are the Rockies back?
Yeah, and Evan is a big collector of lots of Rockies stuff. Evan, how many jerseys do you own?
Too many. 70-something.
Holy moly.
But before anyone is like, all right, I'm worried about your being cavalier with your finances, a lot of these come secondhand or on eBay or on clearance sales. You can get some really great deals if you go to the Rockies Fest garage sale. Or you just find random stuff on eBay sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Like I own a Brad Hopp jersey that I got on eBay for a pretty reasonable amount.
Yeah, there you
and
go.
These are all like replicas and stuff. They're not like game used, team issued. Like I don't have that kind of cash.
I've never seen the point in those kinds of things anyway. Like I don't care if it's game used.
The one jersey I have that I believe counts as team issued is a Herman Marquez autographed team issued jersey that I won in a charity auction.
There you go.
Which is pretty cool.
For his fandom, I don't think Dustin owns a Rockies jersey.
No, I do not.
Don't fall down this rabbit hole.
I don't have any. I don't have any.
I have no closet space because my entire closet is taken up by hats and jerseys.
I've got my county Cappies, our summer baseball team, and then an Avalanche retro reverse jersey that came from China that took about 3 months to get here.
Hey, I'll never hate on those. Like 9 times out of 10 for your average fan, as long as they get the colors right, you can't really tell the difference.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not out here expecting people to go around buying these crazy expensive jerseys when like just getting a knockoff is just fine. The thing that bothers me, especially with Avs ones, is when the colors are just all wrong and you're like, that blue is that's like sky blue. That's not the right blue.
This one turned out pretty good. I got soccer jerseys, I guess. But the one jersey that I wish I still had was from CSU Pueblo. When I played, we got to keep our red top because the next year they were getting new jerseys, and we got to keep our red tops. But then I gave it to my wife when I went to Peru to see her during that Christmas of my senior year, and I left it there and it disappeared.
So somebody down in Peru is rocking a CSU Pueblo jersey.
A very large CSU Pueblo jersey.
Pack number 40. Oh.
But
that's one I wish I had.
Yeah. And I've got a couple of my classic old school Ian Stewart and my City Connect Charlie Blackmon, and recently a purple Ryan McMahon now. So there we go. But when we go to the Rockies game, Dustin, we'll check that clearance rack. I hear there's a lot of Chris Bryant ones on sale.
There are thrown in. I don't know how many are going to be left because you're getting towards the end of the season, but there are some other players thrown in. That's how I got my Brenton Doyle jersey.
Yeah. You're getting a Los Rockies jersey at the giveaway for that Cubs game. So
nice.
We're getting him a Rockies jersey, Evan. There we go.
Beautiful.
Hopefully it fits. But but Evan,
hey, I own a knockoff Ian Desmond jersey because I made a bet.
Ian Osmond. But so
Tommy Osmond.
Evan's pretty ingrained in Rockies history. He's had a lot of favorite players through the years. And so Evan came up with a couple of guys here that he wanted to talk about here. And since the show's been going, he's always offered this first guy especially. Evan's always telling me, when you talk about Jeff Cirillo, I want to be there. Talk about him. Because he's upset that we talked about Mike Hampton without him. And so this one will kind of fit into that. But Jeff Cirillo will be our first guy that we'll talk about here this game. And so, as always, we throw it over to Dustin for the quick rundown of one Jeff Cirillo.
All right, Jeff Cirillo, the right-handed batting and throwing third baseman from Pasadena, California. He was drafted by the Cubs in the 37th round of the 87 draft and didn't go to him, but was drafted in the 91 draft by the Brewers in the 11th round out of USC, University of Southern California, and played for the Brewers and then came over to the Rockies in December of 1999 as a big three-team trade, as the Brewers sent Jeff Cirillo and Scott Carl, left-handed starting pitcher, to the Rockies, and they just threw people all over the place. The Rockies sent Justin Miller to the Athletics, and they sent Henry Blanco and Jamie Wright to the Brewers, and that was their whole big thing. Jeff Cirillo was only with the Rockies for 2 years, those 2 seasons, wore number 7, and was then traded to the Seattle Mariners for Brian Fuentes, Jose Paniagua, and Denny Stark. And he played for Seattle for just another couple seasons, was traded then to the Padres, and bounced around in free agency, did the whole bouncing from here to the Brewers to the Twins to the Diamondbacks, and was done with baseball at the end of 2007.
Mm-hmm.
But was a two-time All-Star. One of those was with the Colorado Rockies.
Yeah, and just 2 seasons with the Rockies, close to 300 games played, 295, hit 320, 379, 475 with a 99 OPS plus, 28 long balls and 198 RBIs. So solid 2 years there for Jeff Cirillo. And so, Evan, got to ask you here, what was it about Jeff Cirillo that has stuck out to you so much, over your life being a Rockies fan?
So Jeff Cirillo came in as Vinny Castilla went out. So it was, I think it was either the year before or that year that Vinny Castilla left the Rockies for the first time when he went to Tampa, I believe, right? And I was, of course, very sad because as a young Rockies fan, I love Vinny Castilla. But in came Jeff Cirillo, and I thought it was cool that he wore number 7. Or I was a kid, so you pick up on the dumbest things to like somebody for. You. Oh, he wore number 7. That's so cool. But it was also just he comes in and he's immediately hitting the ball with authority. He's a super solid defensive third baseman. And I don't know, he really stuck on me. And then he was an all-star in his first season with the Rockies. And I think one of the big things that attached me to him for whatever reason, again, this is silly kid logic, is they gave out as a stadium giveaway a life-sized poster of Jeff Cirillo that had the ticks next to it so you could measure yourself with. I had that in my bedroom and I thought it was the coolest thing. But no, it's just as a kid, you get so attached to the most random of guys, but then you feel a little bit of validation when they end up being really good. And Jeff Cirillo, as a Rocky, was really good. He didn't top his first season. So that 2000 season where he was an all-star, he hit 326, 392, 477, 11 home runs, 115 RBI. And he also didn't strike out that much. He had really great plate discipline. He drew 67 walks to 72 strikeouts. And I don't know, I just thought he was super cool. And then he followed that up with a really solid season in 2020, I almost said 2021, in 2001, where he had even more home runs. He didn't have as many RBI, but still had an 838 OPS. And then as soon as that season concluded, he was gone. And it was sad because I really don't know. There were lots of reasons for him departing, but I'm glad he was here. I wish I had gotten it out before we recorded this. I have a little placard from the stadium that I got at the garage sale this year that is his all-star placard. So back in the day, every player who was an all-star at Coors Field, they had a placard put up in the stadium somewhere that was shaped like a star, had their name on it in the year that they were an all-star. If you go to the Rockies dugout store in the Flatirons Mall, you can see Todd Helton's. They have his hanging up there. But I got that. It's just he's always a player I've been very, very attached to, despite having a very short tenure with the Rockies. And, there's a lot of players like that for me. I think one of the other guys we might talk about on this episode. But I love Jeff Cirillo. And the fact that he still does stuff with the team, despite the fact that he was only there for 2 seasons back in the early 2000s. He comes by for spring training every now and then, and he works with some of the guys and is still a participant. It's very cool. And you can tell that he did care for his time when he was here with the Rockies.
Mm-hmm. That's always the cool thing is that there's a guy that enjoyed actually being here in Colorado, and even just those 2 years were very successful, and still has that connection and will come do stuff with the team. I think, did he come for that, the Blake Street Bombers weekend last year or something. I think he was there for one of the big celebrations last year. I think for
I
like
forget
the
which
Blake
one. I
Bombers.
don't think it was. I don't think it was Bombers Day, but I do believe he was there.
Yeah, he was there for something. No, but cool that he's in that. What do you remember, Jeff Cirillo, Dustin?
I just remember, like Evan said, because I love Vinny Castilla, and when Vinny got shipped off to Tampa Bay, and they bring in Jeff Cirillo, he was an all-star with the Brewers, so he was a guy that could slug it, and that's really, that was what I was. I was in high school, and pretty solid guy. It was like, oh, he's not, slugging 40 home runs like Vinny Castilla would. But that's looking at his stats, that's just wild in 2000 where he had 115 RBI, but only hit 11 home runs. It's just wild, that stat right there, and 53 doubles. And then then I'm thinking back, I'm like, wait, that guy with Todd Helton, like back to back, holy cow. Like that was, and Larry Walker, like that was legit, but I don't remember it as much.
Mm-hmm.
I just remember his name out there. I think I remember more when he left and they brought in Todd Zeal, and I was like, oh, I hate this guy. But
I also actually really like Todd Zeal. I have a great deal of affection for Todd Zeal.
I think just because he was from the Mets, and I was like, ugh, I don't like that guy. But I don't know.
I think what was probably helped too, as Jeff Cirillo comes in replacing Vinny Castilla, and it's same with Jeffrey Hammonds, who had a monster year that year as well, with a really good year that year too, with Jeff Cirillo in his first year, as those were the guys that came in to replace Dante Bichette and Vinny Castilla, prominent parts of the Blake Street Bombers, and they were productive and helped the team in their own ways still. And even though those were bad years pitching wise for the Rockies, they brought in some guys they were able to replace talent and still get some good stuff. Maybe not to the level they were getting, but still good contributors.
Yeah.
And so that probably helps it a lot more. Like, okay, this guy's replacing one of my favorite players. At least he doesn't suck.
And the 2000 Rockies especially were so weird, just the way that team was composed. Like, there's plenty of teams, like people think about the 2012 Rockies for like a who's who of who's that for the team, but the 2000 Rockies were a very strange assortment of players because the team changed dramatically. And so, you had Todd Helton there, and that was the year that he should have won MVP. But if you look at the top 12 players by wins above replacement, there's a lot of names that I think some people aren't really going to remember. So number 2 by wins above replacement was Gabe White, another favorite of mine. Brian Bohannon. Number 4 was Jeff Cirillo. Pedro Estacio, Mike Myers, Jose Jimenez, Jeffrey Hammonds, Julian Tavares, Larry Walker, Todd Hollinsworth, and Tom Goodwin. And then you look at the rest of the roster, the 40-man that year, and you've got guys like Adam Melhuse, Jeff Fry, Scott Servais, Darren Bragg. It's just like, it's such a fun list on such a weird roster of like, who are these people?
Who the heck remembers Darren Bragg and his 71 games played?
I remember Darren Bragg and his 71 games played because I frequently use him in Immaculate Grid.
Yeah, it's cool though that's one of those just trades that worked out where Jeff Cirillo. I wonder if they could have maybe kept him around longer, but it was probably part of that Dan O'Dowd trend of we're bringing him in. He's kind of a stopgap now while we wait for some of the guys we're drafting to get ready and still building towards that. Garrett Atkins probably somewhere in the pipeline still waiting on him. So you're getting into slowly starting to transition to Generation R, but that's still a nice little stopgap player for a couple of years.
Yeah, and I honestly wish we had kept Jeff Cirillo for longer because while we were waiting for Garrett Atkins, we just had such a weird revolving door at third base. So you had Todd Zeal, and you had, was it like Chris Stein or whoever, former Red, I think. And then Vinny Castilla came back, and then Vinny left again, and Garrett Atkins came in, and I think Atkins made his debut in like 2003, but he wasn't the starter for a couple years. And I feel like it could have been nice to have a guy who contributed like Jeff Cirillo did for the next couple seasons, because he had a pretty long and solid career. He didn't retire until he was 37 years old in 2007.
Mm-hmm.
And a career batting average of, close to 300. So he was, a good hitter throughout his whole life, his whole career. It dipped down a little bit, and then he had a revival when he went back to the Brewers. But the one thing that I do remember, like going through some of the memories, is on June 28th of that 2000 season when he just went absolutely wild. And there used to be, I don't remember if they ever had it on the show, but I know in like MVP baseball, where you could go and they had like the greatest baseball games ever. And like there was the Sean Green challenge where you had to hit 4 home runs and get however total bases he had. This is one of those games on that June 28th that Jeff Cirillo had when the Rockies had a slugfest against the Giants, and Jeff Cirillo goes 4 for 5 with 6 RBI and had 14 total bases that game. So he had a double and then a 2-run homer, a solo shot, and another 2-run homer in the 7th. And so, like, that's what he batted 403 at Coors Field that season. That's insane.
Yeah,
I need to look, because that might have been better than Todd Helton hit at Coors Field that year.
Todd only had a 13 base game.
Yeah, and looking over here, you can find his page over at MLB.com. They'll have the bio info. Here's some interesting facts just from the 2000 season. I'll try and go through this as quickly as I can. Had a career best matched his career best that year with 326 average. Led National League third baseman in average and hits for the second consecutive season. Set a career high with 115 RBI, which is 10th in the National League. Tied for 4th in the National League with 58 multi-hit games. Ranked 4th among NL third basemen with a 963 fielding mark. He had 41 double plays, led National League third baseman. Became the first player in Major League history to hit 45 doubles in both leagues, according to Saber. With 53 doubles, he joined Todd Helton as the first pair of National League teammates, the 6th Major League tandem to top 50 doubles in a year. Second in the National League with 12 sac flies, had a career best 15-game hit streak, where he was from April 21st to May 9th, where he batted .463 with 5 doubles, 1 triple, a homer, and 14 ribbies. Had a career high 5 hits on June 18th, career high 3 home runs on June 28th that year with 14 total bases. Had 6 ribbies and 5 runs. Had at least 1 RBI in 8 straight games from June 25th to July 2nd. 18 ribbies in total. A player of the week after he hit .636 with 4 homers, 16 RBIs in a span. Named to his all-star team, had a career high 7 ribbies and got his 1,000th career hit August 12th that year. With 115 RBIs and just 11 home runs, he became the first player since Brooklyn's Dixie Walker, who had 9 home runs, 116 RBIs in 1946, to drive in as many as 115 runs with as few as 11 home runs. And he batted .391 with runners in scoring position, 2nd in the National League. So you read that, and you think of how incredible that 2000 season was, like how historic and incredible it was. And like you said, he wasn't throwing up 40 bombs, but he was productive at the plate.
Yeah. And while you were rattling those off, I did look it up. So Todd Helton at home in 2000, remember this is the year that he should have won MVP, 391 batting average, 484 on base percentage at Coors Field. Jeff Cirillo .403 batting average, .472 on base percentage at Coors Field. The man could hit.
Yeah. And with that, we won't dive too much, but he could sling it over there at third base too.
Yeah, he had a very good arm. And another reason I just thought of, here's another reason why he probably sticks so hard in my mind. That 2000 season was the first full season with the purple alternates.
Oh, there you go.
And every time I think of Jeff Cirillo, I think of the purple alternate.
It's pretty good. Oh, also in 2001, he hit Major League Baseball's 200,000th home run since 1900.
I actually did not know that. That's a very cool statistic.
That is a random. Also set the National League single season record for consecutive errorless games at third base and most consecutive chances without an error. Not making an error from June 20th through the end of the season. Not too shabby for old Jeff Cirillo.
It's why it's surprising that he never won a Gold Glove, because he was a very solid defensive third baseman.
Yeah. Continuing a trend that we've come to enjoy at third base for the Rockies.
Unless you're Nolan Arenado, you're not going to get that respect put on your name.
Yeah. Yeah. Jeff Cirillo, one of those underrated Rockies that maybe gets forgotten, but he shouldn't be. But brief stint, but man, those are 2 good years for old Jeff Cirillo. But moving along here, here's another guy that another one of Evan's favorites. It's old Terry Shumpert for the Rockies.
I wrote one of my favorite articles I've ever written over at Purple Row was a deep dive into Terry Shumpert as I call him, the ultimate Rockies utility player, like a true super utility player. He played basically every position except for, I think, catcher and pitcher while he was a Colorado Rocky. And I always just got really excited to see him. And it's funny because it's me it's a guy in a long line of players that I fell in love with. Despite them being largely, bench players, role players, utility guys. I think of my how much I love Garrett Hampson still, and Terry was that guy for me as a kid. And he had a much longer career with the Rockies, where he played, from 98 to 2002 with the Rockies. He largely started. No, not largely. He did. He started his career and played most of his career with the Kansas City Royals. He was a second-round pick in '87 out of the University of Kentucky, like pretty high draft pedigree, but then just ended up being this crazy talented utility guy that the Rockies had for, 5 seasons, and was always just so much fun to watch. And I always thought it was interesting because, again, stupid kid brain of like, wow, this guy plays like a different position every night.
Yeah. And well, you were starting to take some of Dustin's job. That's the only reason we have him is run down his career. So throw it over to Dustin real quick.
Forgive me for stepping on toes.
Well, before I get into it, I'll do a little for the video. If I could keep the hat on top of my head best I can. I was going to draw in a little dash because that's what I remember Terry Shumpert. The hat on the top of his head, barely on top of his head with that little pencil-thin mustache. Just a grinder, Technically a second baseman, pinch hitter, just everywhere, all over the field. All 5'11" of him. But Terry Shumpert from Kentucky was drafted, as Evan was saying, by the Royals in the second round of the '87 draft. And made his debut in 1990 with the Royals and played for them for 5 years, went to Boston for a season, to the Cubs, to San Diego. And then in 1998, he came over as a free agent signing in August of 1997. He was released by the Padres and then signed with the Rockies. And then was one of those guys that go a season, couple seasons, then re-sign with the Rockies. and was with them for 5 seasons. Then went on to Tampa Bay for his last. That was his last big league experience. Went up, signed with the Red Sox, with the Pirates, and then in October of 2004 he was done out of Major League Baseball. But with the Rockies, he was number 28 for a time and number 22. Good old Terry Shumpert.
I always remember him wearing 22.
That's what I remembered.
Because I think he only played in 28 for for that 1998 season, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But Terry he's also pretty well known right now because I believe he's either the cousin or uncle of Mookie Betts.
Yes, they're first cousins once removed.
But I think it's one of those things where he just calls him his nephew because it gets so confusing with all of that. But Terry Shumpert it's funny because he came in, and in that was another really weird season for the Rockies, 1999, and ended up being one of the Rockies' most valuable players that year.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he was worth 2.4 wins above replacement per Baseball Reference.
He fits into that. He's like the epitome of Every Rockie Ever, where it's just kind of this random guy that was around for several years, didn't have the big prominent role, but enough to stick around and contribute to the team for several years, and then just sort of disappear in a sense. But it's one of those crucial bench roles. But looking there in 1999, a career year basically for him in 1999, 10 home runs, had a 347 average, 584 slugging, a 997 OPS, 10 home runs, 3 triples, 26 doubles, 37 ribbies, 14 stolen bases. Like, one of those guys that he could get on a hot streak, and then he just keeps getting that playing time.
Yeah. And during that season, he played second base, third base, center, left, right, short, and pinch hit occasionally. And like I said earlier, he ended his Rockies career having played every position except for catcher and pitcher. And there were times, because you remember, there's that weird time where Nafi Perez had to catch that one time. I always held out hope that they were going to put Terry into pitch, or that they were going to put him into catch, so that he could complete the 9-position run with the Rockies, having played every single position. And I still wish to this day that he could have done it.
Yeah, he would have been the best option for it. I can't think of anybody, in recent history that could have done that. But Terry Shumpert was a guy that could get thrown into any position and compete. And he did that with the Rockies. Those numbers, you think of a second baseman utility guy, and in his 5 seasons, 30 home runs, 290 hits, a 282 batting average, 97 walks, and he was just a guy that it felt like, no matter what, his name was always in the box score every game somewhere, whether it was pinch hitting. And that's what I miss of today's game, is we don't get those pinch hitters anymore, really. Like the Terry Shumperts and the Lenny Harris and Greg Norton, those guys, even, Jason Giambi with his time with the Rockies, those guys that would go in and get a quality at bat. And that's what Terry Shumpert was. I remember him in, I want a picture, like I said, with his hat, the mustache, and the stirrups. The high stirrup socks. For some reason, that's what I always think, this old school dude that was with those early 2000 Rockies.
Yeah, and with Terry, it's funny because he's this old school dude, and so old school, it's like, all right, man, here's the glove for the position you're playing today. It's like, okay, and then he goes out and has a pretty solid game.
Yeah, if you Google Terry Shumpert and look at images, A vast majority of them are him in a Rockies uniform. It's coming and having an impact, because you have that a decent sized little career, 11 years or 14 years in the big leagues, bouncing around. But really, it seems like Colorado was where he really got to make the most impact in his playing career. 450 games in a Rockies uniform compared to the 284 he played with Kansas City over his 5 years there. So really, the Rockies would be the team he could claim as, yeah, this is the team I played for in the big leagues. Like, this is my number one team.
Yeah, and it makes me sad because he's so often, I think, an overlooked part of Rocky's history. But he was a key member of those like late '90s, early 2000s Rockies teams. And when you look at the list of, Rocky's utility players, he is one of the most valuable, played the most positions, and had the most plate appearances of any Rockies utility player. And I have a list, and that list is made up of guys like Jamie Carroll, Jonathan Herrera, Garrett Hampson, Daniel Descalso, Jeff Baker, Kurt Abbott, Pat Valleca, Christian Adames, and Jordan Pacheco. Just all the utility guys that the Rockies have used, and that was basically through their formation through like 2022 or whenever it was I wrote that article. And Shumpert's at the top of the list.
Yeah, one of those things where, may not get the best defense at some of those positions, but good enough that you can put him there in a pinch and fill out as needed. No, you're not going to throw him at first base every single day because you got a guy named Todd Helton there. But if you needed to, I think that's good to have that emergency utility guy that you can just throw in there, where versatility is good to have on your roster with a couple of guys, not everybody on your roster. That sometimes the Rockies try to do now, but Terry Shumpert said, this is a utility player that does it well. You'll get what you can defensively. You'll get some good stuff, but we can also contribute on the offensive side of things. Pinch run, pinch hit, put him out there as needed. It's a nice luxury.
Yeah, the big thing for me for Terry is that you really could just put him wherever, and he'd go out and he'd play, and he'd give it his all when he went out there. He never phoned it in. If he's playing first base that day, it's okay. I'm your first baseman. Let's do it. You got him in basically every outfield position, every infield position. And that's why, like you said, if there was ever a guy that you had to pick of a position player that you would throw in at catcher or to pitch and who's going to give it his all, it might as well have been Terry Shumpert.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if he would have had like a hose, he's pumping 99 or something, or he'd have just actually, a guy like that probably had the sickest knuckleball ever. Like, one of those guys, like I can see him just going up, and it's just like, oh, one of those nastiest knuckleballs ever, because he's one of those guys. And that's I love those kind of ball players. I had a coach in my sophomore year of high school in JV that he let me play everywhere but catcher. And I did that as a coach. I was in a summer game. He was one of my dudes, and he started out pitching, and then the next inning he went to catch, and then we got no hit that game. It was only a 5-inning game, but he played every position. I just had to switch him between batters from left field to center field and then to right field. So he knocked out the whole outfield in 1 inning. But and then we did that. He was at third base for one batter, went to shortstop for another batter. But we got him all the way in. And his folks, I ran into his folks. It was a few months ago. Like, oh, Brandon just loved that one time in summer baseball when he played all 9 positions. He remembers that so much. And so that it's just a funny thing. And Terry Shumpert was one of those guys that, was a ball player. And that's what I love, is those guys that they don't care what, throw them the glove and they'll go get it done. Like, it's not that, oh, he has to have this specialty and know all the ins and outs. See ball, catch ball, see ball, hit ball. It doesn't matter where.
Yeah, and he's a guy that just continue to, after his playing days, perfect kind of player to just go on and become a coach and just help baseball players. And he had a son that was playing in the Blue Jays system, or not the Blue Jays. Was drafted by the Braves in 2016, and then he ended up moving on. Was with the Dodgers for a little bit in their system, and then was with Washington for a little bit, and then he became a free agent in November of 2023. I don't think he's currently with a team, but had his son bouncing around, playing the game. Fortunately, didn't have as much success as his dad, but still, he's that coach and continues that on, and helped out Mookie Betts, worked with him, and all kinds of stuff. Good baseball guy that you'd want around.
It's one of those, what do you call it? It's like, let's remember some guys or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Terry Shumpert was a true guy to remember. And Nick Shumpert is still playing baseball. He's playing with Sioux City in the American Association this year.
Nice. So hopefully he can find his way back into affiliated ball.
I think there's some other former Rockies that are playing with Sioux City this year as well. I need to find out.
Yeah. Terry Shumpert, one of the ultimate utility players in Rockies history. We'll remember him. But moving on to our one last guy we have time for talk about, and this is a bigger one, a guy who unfortunately didn't get to last long in the Rockies organization because he had to be included in a trade to get rid of a pesky contract the Rockies wanted to give up on. And it's Juan Pierre. And so, Dustin, give us the quick rundown on Juan Pierre, the speedster.
Juan Pierre, the left-handed outfielder from Mobile, Alabama. He was drafted twice by the Mariners in the 95 draft and the 96 draft. And he said, nah, I'm going to go to college, and was drafted by the Rockies in the 13th round of the 98 draft and made his major league debut in 2000 and was only with the Rockies 3 seasons, well, 2.5 technically, and then was traded in 2003, in 2002 with Mike Hampton to the Marlins for Vic Derensburg, Charles Johnson, Pablo Zuna, and Preston Wilson, and had some really great success with the Marlins, and then was traded to the Cubs and played there for a year, 2 years, went to the Dodgers, and then from the Dodgers to the White Sox, and then kind of bounced around, signed with the Phillies, back with the Marlins, and was done playing baseball in 2013 after his last season with Miami. But 14 years total in the big leagues, were number 6 in his rookie season, then number 9 is what we all remember him with. Won the World Series in 2003 with the Marlins, and just a really good ball player, a speedster, slapping the ball around, and that was our Juan Pierre.
One of the exemplary number 9s of Rockies history. Except for like 1 or 2 examples, you always think of the guys who wore number 9 as these absolute grinders, who put their all into the game, regardless of if they were a star player or not. Because you have Vinny Castilla, of course, the first number 9, Juan Pierre, DJ LeMahieu, Connor Joe, now Brenton Doyle. Just it's a great number, and it is the one we remember Juan Pierre for wearing. But something I remember Juan Pierre for, even after his Rockies days, was that he was one of the great Iron Men from season to season, where he had a stretch of, I think, 5 straight seasons where he played in every single game after he left the Rockies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, from 2003 to 2007, he played every single game, 162 for all 3 seasons in Florida, and then also 162 with Chicago, and then all 162 with the Dodgers in 2007. Good old Juan Pierre.
And I hate that he was a Dodger. I do. I always do. But it was so cool because, he immediately got to be a part of something so special after leaving the Rockies and going to unfortunately, the Florida Marlins, where in 2003 they won the World Series and he was part of it. And I was really happy for him back then, though, of course, a little jealous because, that just how it be. But Juan Pierre was famous for his work ethic above everything else. And I think that's reflected in how many games he played, and that, he was not a power hitter by any shape of the word. In his pretty long career, he only had like 18 total home runs. But, oh boy, could he bunt or slap hit beautifully.
And that's what I loved about him. It's just that he was explosive in that way, dropping the bunt down, slapping it, and beating out a base hit. The one that I remember Juan Pierre best for was a game that I was at. It was in a summer base. We were playing in Fort Morgan for a baseball tournament. They got rained out. We were stuck in Fort Morgan for like a week when we were only supposed to be there for like 2 or 3 days. But one of the days, since we were rained, the fields were flooded. That's northeastern Colorado. We went to Denver to a Rockies game. They're playing the Giants, and Andres Galarraga is at first base for the Giants, and Juan Pierre slaps a little blooper just over the big cat's head. One of those that the ball lands in no man's land between second, right, and first. And before anybody could touch the ball, Juan Pierre was standing on second base. And that was one of those, like in college, the pitchers, we'd have to do base running when they were doing drills. So we just have to go run the bases just to have people. And my coach wanted to ask, where do you want me to hit it? And I said, give me a blooper just past first base. Because I always remembered that hustle play Juan Pierre had where he just a lightning bolt. And I may or may not have gotten thrown out at second base. But still, it was one of those, that's Juan Pierre for me. The speedster that made plays happen. And sadly, it was only that short time with the Rockies. But I always think, man, he was there for a while. He was like our center fielder. He didn't have a great arm, but he could track the ball down. And then I look, I'm like, oh, wait. No, his career was with the Marlins, not with us.
It is a weird one to me that it feels like Juan Pierre was here for so much longer than he actually was. And I think it's because he did so much in those 3 seasons. He's still one of the Rockies' top 5 or top 10 all-time base stealers, despite the fact that he was only here for 3 seasons, because he had back-to-back years of 40+ stolen bases. And this was long before they made the bases bigger to make stealing more productive. Mm-hmm. And he had a couple years where he had 60 stolen bases with the Marlins. He was just so blazingly fast. And one of the reasons why I'm very attached to Juan Pierre is back in the day, the Rockies ran a contest that was you could win getting to go and play catch with Juan Pierre. And it was part of an encouragement to start a college fund kind of thing or something like that my dad had signed me up for. And somehow I won. Insane to me, because this is a formative memory now in my mind, and the first time we were going to go, so the first day that we were supposed to go and do this, it got canceled because that was the day that Buddy Bell got fired. But then we had the makeup date and we went there, and in the Coors Field outfield got to just play a game of catch with Juan Pierre. And I have a photo of me as a kid with him. I have an autographed baseball that he gave me. But then the other thing that he did was, while we were playing catch, he airmails a ball right over my head. And I'm just like, okay, I'll just go get the ball. And as soon as I turn around, I basically run face into chest into Larry Walker, who he had thrown the ball to. And like without Juan Pierre, none of this happens. And I wonder if I'm even as big of a Rockies fan today as I am, because that's such a formative memory in my life. And he was, of course, he was wonderful. He was super nice. You know, he listened to me ask him all sorts of stupid questions while we played catch. And it's something that, you know, we're so 20, almost 25 years ago this happened. And I still just, it still sticks. It's like a core memory of my life. And that's one of the reasons why I love Juan Pierre so much.
Yeah, that's what the cool one of those memories, or it doesn't necessarily have to do with on the field, but the nice little memory they're able to make with a player.
I also met some other interesting Rockies of that era. Todd Hollinsworth was there. Mark Little was there. But the whole thing was like, it was Juan Pierre. And Juan Pierre was one of those ones where he came up right as I started to understand what like rookies and prospects were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he debuted when he was 22 years old there in 2000. Finished 6th in Rookie of the Year in just 51 games. It's like, it's one of those, okay, here's this prospect, a young player that then you can attach to him. Okay, I'm going to follow him. He's new. And unfortunately, we had to send him over to the Marlins to dump off the Mike Hampton contract.
Which wasn't even necessary, because I still hold that Mike Hampton deserved more of a chance to see if he could round into at least being a pretty solid pitcher for the Rockies. But they got scared and cut bait, and we lost Juan Pierre because of it.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately. But yeah, it wasn't here a long time, but man, when he was here, it was a good little time. And who knows if they've been able to keep him, at least some of the guys they traded for panned out. Preston Wilson did pretty well for a couple of years, and some of those other guys. But you wonder, man, if they'd been able to keep Juan Pierre, for several more years, who knows what could happen? Because he was that mold of a leadoff guy who could get on base, swipe second, come around to score. He's not striking out a lot. He's a contact guy. He's getting on base. If the Rockies had a guy like that today, man, that'd go a really long way into helping a lot of things.
Yeah, it makes you think about what a very interesting, more consistent lineup you could have had in the early 2000s, because the Rockies lineups were all over the place in the early 2000s as we're leaving the bomber era and things are sort of all over the place. So imagine having a much more stable lineup with some of these guys who could have been there for a long time. Ben Petrick at catcher, Todd Helton at first, second base, I don't know. Third base, Jeff Cirillo. You've got Juan Pierre out in center field and Larry Walker in right. And it would have been, it's a very interesting what could have been.
Yeah. It's a shame we didn't get to see Juan Pierre more, but no, at least he carved out a really nice career for himself, had success wherever he went, stole a ton of bases everywhere he went.
Extremely well liked wherever he went.
Yeah. 614 stolen bases in his career.
That's a lot.
Had 100 even with the Rockies, 134 with the Dodgers, 190 in 4 years with the Marlins.
And he's one of those guys where OPS really isn't fair to him, because, you know, we look at OPS as sort of a general all-purpose stat, but it really just does not apply to Juan Pierre, because he was never there to hit for power.
Yeah. No, he's slapping. He set like a Rocky single season record for singles. Like 160 something there in 2000 and 2001. So slap a single, get on first. His extra base was him stealing second base and then third base, and boom, triple. That's what it took.
And he's still up there for single season triples. Despite not really being much of a slugger, he still had 11 triples in 2001.
Yeah. Good old Juan Pierre. He's one of those guys that even towards the end of his career, I remember him with the Marlins wearing those orange jerseys, and when they had their black and orange when they became the Miami Marlins. I remember those good times. I was like, yeah, Juan Pierre. That dude's awesome. Juan Pierre.
All of these guys we talked about today were awesome.
Mm-hmm. He also has a nice full name, Juan Devon Pierre. Just rolls off the tongue.
It's a pretty cool name.
I think Dustin's AirPods died.
I have the microphone on my computer, I think.
Yeah.
But that's just weird.
Yeah.
But amen to what everybody else said.
Yeah. You can hear the echo, but yeah, awesome stuff. And Evan, we appreciate you hopping on, talk about some of these guys. There are some definitely good Rockies to remember, especially in those early 2000s. That era that was dominated by Todd Helton. There was a lot of other guys worth remembering in that era.
And hey, none of the other guys we talked about were apparently mentioned in a song by Beyonce and Jay-Z. In the song Deja Vu by Beyonce and Jay-Z, there's a line that goes, "I used to run bass like Juan Pierre."
There you go. Old Juan Pierre. And he's bounced around. I think he's done a lot of stuff with the Marlins. He's like worked in their front office and all that kind of stuff. So I think he does a lot with them, but nice for him to come back to Coors Field, visit the Rockies here and there, because we all love Juan Pierre. But that'll do it here for this edition of Every Rockie Ever. You can find us over on Twitter at Every Rockie Ever. I'll have a couple of new guys to post once the season's over, and we're sure that they're not coming back, which is hard to do with the Rockies these days. Ty Block will not stop coming back. I can't put him back in yet. But there's some guys we can add on, and if I actually get around to it, maybe more minor leaguers and stuff. But you can follow that over on Twitter and at Rocky Mountain Rooftop, ROCKYMTN Rooftop. Evan, where can the folks find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Evan_Lang27. I would love to hear from you. And on Purple Row, doing the Monday Rock Piles and Tuesday Weekly Pebble Reports.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff. You can find Dustin over on Twitter at Vamos Rockies. That's VAMOS ROCKYIES, Vamos Rockies. Also find him over on TikTok, Mr. T Spanish, if you're into that thing. Follow me over at sideline_crowd on Twitter, and write in the Wednesday Rock Piles at purplerow.com, and write for fansforsports.com. And be sure to like and subscribe here on your favorite podcasting platforms and here on YouTube. We appreciate the support and that continued growth. We're not a huge operation, but hey, we greatly appreciate all those that tune in and support our dumb little shows, our silly little shows that we enjoy talking about. And share your thoughts in the comments about these players we've talked about, and let us know some other guys you want us to reminisce about, talk about, because hey, we still got a lot of Rockies left to go. 600 plus guys still left to talk about, plus all the coaches and all that good stuff. So appreciate you tuning in, but that'll do it here. I'm Skyler. That's Dustin. We've been joined by Evan Lang. And until next time, this has been Every Rockie Ever. Farewell!